All right, guys. So listen up. It's a sunny day in the Austrian Alps, right? And there's like two cows hanging out on this hill, right? Just like you guys, right? And the one cow looks at the other cow, and he goes moo. And then the other cow looks back at the first cow and answers moo. Get it? Moo. A couple of years ago, at my going away party in Vienna, Austria, a group of my friends hoisted me up onto a huge inflatable unicorn. Video footage exists of me laughing hysterically as I ride said unicorn.
Oh my God.
This occurred on a crowded dance floor in a basement disco uptown. Just in front of me, not visible in the footage, but you can still hear him, we booked a musician to perform on stage, and he was trying to coax everybody into doing a sing-along. However, distracted by my joyous laughter, no one paid any attention at all. Now, some friends around me wondered if this had been an entirely wise thing to do, that is, climbing up onto a huge inflatable unicorn after that number of drinks, and getting hoisted into the air very close indeed to some of the lights and other tech hanging from the ceiling. To those friends, I would say, no. Probably this was not a wise decision, and yet it was definitely worth the danger. This clip can be looped and watched forever, and I like to think that in some world I am still atop that unicorn, laughing ludicrously, even now, and I will forever remain doing so as long as that file still exists. In case you can't tell, this clip fills me with both happiness and sadness, because on one hand, it captures me and my community at a very special moment in my life. On the other hand, I can no more climb back onto that unicorn than I can return to Vienna and pick up any other part of that life where it left off. Venues and cultural institutions near and dear to me have closed their doors, friends have left town, and even the unicorn, I've heard, got accidentally punctured and no longer fills up with air. Sad as I am about all of those developments, I can only be grateful for the time I got to spend there. I spent 15 years living and working in Vienna. That's a long time for somebody like me. That's a long time for anybody. Back in 2013, one of my besties from Vancouver surprised me by moving over. Her name's Leora. Coincidentally, I happened to be in Vancouver when she hosted her going away party, and so she asked me if I could perform some stand-up comedy like I do in Austria for the cows. I agreed to do it, though I remixed the jokes for a non-bovine North American audience.
It's a sunny day in the Austrian Alps. The sun is shining. The sky is blue. There's an Alpine hut in the distance. Lots of mountains. Lots of trees. Hills. Mountains. And on this one particular hill covered with grass, there's Chuck Norris and a Belgian nun. And they are grazing. So the Belgian nun looks over at Chuck Norris and she goes, moo. And Chuck Norris looks back at the Belgian nun and he answers, moo.
How could I not invite Johnny to do his atrocious stand-up at my going away party?
You had a pretty rich life, first in Toronto, but then in Vancouver. And then when you moved over to Austria, Toronto, Vancouver is already quite a huge leap. But then Vancouver, Austria, I mean, that's different languages, that's different, entirely different cultural background. How did it feel at first?
I often tell people that I find Vienna feels more like whatever home is than Vancouver ever did. Vancouver was a special transient place, sort of where I spent most of my 20s full, I lived there and I partied there and I had lots of weird experiences, and it was what bridged me from being a child or a teenager to the adult I am now. Now I've been in Vienna for 9 years, longer than I lived in Vancouver.
But now that you're on the other side of the world, do you feel like that entire life that you had there is like gone, it's over, it doesn't exist anymore, or does it still continue in some weird sort of way?
That's 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 a curious question. Yeah, for the most part, does feel like that life kind of never existed, but I know it did. Like I describe the sort of different lives I've had almost as being like, having a limb chopped off, because the people who you get to know, you might have lots of great experiences and become really close to them, but they'll never know all of this formative stuff that preceded it. And so that part just doesn't come into this narrative or the story of who I am. And then when I go back to Canada, usually Toronto, then it's sort of like, hey, my arm has been reattached. People will never know the you from before you knew them.
I mean, on one hand, you definitely are grieving a sense of community, but it's also a sense of the self that is being grieved too.
Yeah, and maintaining friendships and relationships. Otherwise we are just, cease to function and probably die of heartbreak or confusion. I think in a way it's quite lucky to be able to appreciate that.
It's a privilege to have had our hearts broken in so many different ways.
Yes, and in so many different countries.
8 years after Leora's going away party, it was my turn to throw one of my own, making the same journey in reverse, which incidentally, she also attended. Much like Leora, one could ask me, why? You've got an amazing job, an amazing community, a fascinating life. And from a safety standpoint, it was all true. I didn't have it bad in Vienna. Not per se. But as my 40th birthday was creeping inexorably closer, I'd begun to think in terms of my own legacy. Or let's say my own satisfaction with my lot in life. Was I content to spend the duration of my adult life in a country where I'd never become a citizen or be able to vote, where the native language was not my own, where there were few job opportunities available to someone like me, and there was scarcely any room to grow? Was I satisfied to spend my life at a certain level, or, let's say, height, on a metaphorical unicorn, never to exit the party cellar until I'm too old to do even that? This clip could loop forever and ever and ever, as I've said, but I couldn't. Not really. So, difficult as it was, I had to climb down, say goodbye to my friends, and leave. Now, the catch 2022 of any huge move is, of course, the fact that wherever you go, there you are. There are things you cannot escape. When I first moved to Europe in 2006 at the age of 23, call it a catch 23, I guess, I didn't realize yet the truth of that statement, and I essentially trolled myself by still needing therapy to work through the issues I'd attempted to physically flee. But this time, 15 years later, I hoped, was different. For one thing, now I was in a long-term relationship with a wonderful partner. Secondly, I had a lot of work and life experience I hadn't had before. And I'd done therapy. It wasn't me that I was trying to flee anymore. Still, there was some anxiety starting again at the ripe old age of 39, partly because, being the person that I am, there was no way that I wasn't going to want to mark my 40th birthday in some significant way. Me being me, I was going to do a party. The terror, however, was that having only 1 year to create a new life and social circle, I'd end up doing this event with like 6 people in attendance, including my mum. And instead of celebrating 40 years on Earth, the party would emphasize everything I'd lost by moving, and I'd find myself sitting all alone on a deflated unicorn on the floor. Suffice it to say, that's not what happened. If the shape of the party offered any sort of snapshot of my new life here, then it is one that suggests that leaving my comfort zone to pursue new ways of experiencing my life was a fruitful endeavor. It paid off. And hey, I even found a new audience for my Austrian cow jokes.
Something you don't know, probably, is that one of the hardest drugs known to man is actually manufactured in Austria, in the Austrian Alps, using cow farts. They call it methamphetamines.